Please give her a round of applause. My shiro, Rosa Clemente.
Born in the South Bronx in the 70s, I'm a hip hop baby. And in 1979, my father hit a number and moved us to Westchester County. 18 miles away from where I grew up is a whole different world. And me, my sister and brother growing up a very middle-class lifestyle. We had everything we wanted, while my father to this day still has his business in the Bronx. And my mom was a G in knowing that while the Bronx was burning, that she should buy a building. So while everybody was saying, first, women don't buy things, because this is the 70s and 80s. Second, the Bronx is burning, it will never come back. My mom was like, no, this is our community. So because of those decisions my parents made, me, my sister, and brother were particularly very blessed to have any resource we needed. But every weekend, my mom would bring us back to see our family in the Bronx, right? Like, you're just building with family. You know how it goes, especially if you grow up in the hood or a barrio or in the projects, right? You spend all Sunday in a one-bedroom apartment building with your cousins, and your titi's cooking you rice, and the TV doesn't work, and you've seen, you know, things that are not good, and you've seen things that are bad, are good. But that always stayed with me because I knew that all my cousins were just as smart as me and had the ability to be going to college like I did, but because they were in the Bronx and they were Puerto Rican and they were girls and they were these Puerto Rican kids, that their college counselors would tell them, you know, just go find a job. You're not made for college. People from this community don't go to college. And then I went to SUNY Albany, the State University of New York system, right? CUNY is the city system, SUNY is the state system, to Albany. And the first year I did okay. I was like academically way prepared because the school I went to in Westchester was a public school, but we had like 8 kids in a class, and our trips were not to the Bronx Zoo or the Botanical Gardens. Our trips were to Greece, Morocco, Spain, right? Those were our class trips. And this is a public school. So I was academically prepared, but I didn't grow up in a movement household. I didn't grow up learning much about being Puerto Rican except language and pride in a flag and cultural pride and always going back to the island every year with my family. But when I got to SUNY Albany, that first year I went through a very rough time. I was dealing with white girls' racism when I went to school in a community that was half black, half white, and we were the only Latinos in the entire community at that time. So my relationship to white people was never like, y'all are better than us. It was always like, that's Mary, that's my best friend, that's Brooke, that's so-and-so, right? My relationship to African Americans, the African Americans in our community were sometimes more affluent than the white folks in our community, right? So my understanding of race, I didn't have an understanding of race. I literally grew up in Elmsford, 1 mile utopic community. Everybody got along. I was a cheerleader. My sister was a cheerleader. I ran track. She ran softball. We won awards. We were in every group, right? If somebody saw you smoking a cigarette, your mom knew it 1 hour later, like Rosie was at the pizza shop smoking a cigarette, you know? But so I grew up with knowing white folks as people, not white people. And they didn't know me as Rosa or Puerto Rican, but I was Rosa. So then I go to college, right, where you're supposed to be smart and intellectual, and run into racist white kids from Long Island doing stupid shit. Writing nigger on our walls, calling us spics, having white boys threatening to rape us as women of color as we're walking down, you know, like, so that first year in college, I was going through so much because I didn't know anything about racism. I didn't know much about who I was and my history as a Puerto Rican. I didn't understand African American history outside of slavery, Dr. King and Malcolm X. I thought feminism was a white thing. I didn't know that there were black feminists and Chicana feminists. But that first year was so rough that I almost failed out of school. And my mom was like, you got to get your grades up or we're not going to pay for you to go to school. And when I went back the second year, I sought a peer counselor. And that peer counselor said, you need to go to organizations. You need to go to the Black Student Union. You need to go to Fuerza Latina. Maybe you want to join a sorority or fraternity, but you need to get involved in something or you're going to go crazy. This is a predominantly white school, and these are not the white folks you grew up with. And I joined organizations, and I found my home in the Black Student Union, the Albany State University Black Alliance. And by the end of my second year, I switched my major from political science to Africana studies because I met my first mentor, Dr. Vivian Verdell Gordon. I accidentally got put in her class, and it was a Black family class. I was a first semester sophomore, and that class was for juniors and seniors. And the minute I saw Dr. Gordon lecture, I realized I had never had a Black woman teaching me, right? Even though my school in Elmsford was better than all our teachers were white. So I was like, wait, Black people aren't doing well? Because the only Black people I've seen are doing well. I didn't have a stereotypical image of Black folks. And I had an image of Elmsford African Americans that were affluent. So I learned so much from that class, I immediately changed my major. And she said, if you're going to be an Africana Studies major, just remember you're going to have to be bicultural. You're going to get things in a classroom, and then you're going to get things out of the classroom that are more important than what's being said in the class. And at the end of my sophomore year, it was actually a brother, his name is Mike, I never forget, Michael Logan. He said, you need to be the president of the Black Student Union. And I was like, dude, I'm just finding out I'm African descendant. Like, people aren't gonna vote for a Puerto Rican woman to be president of the BSU, but they did, and I became the president of the Black Student Union. And immediately, less than a week after I became president of BSU, many Latinos on that campus were calling me a sellout. A lot of administrators that were Latino brought me into the office and said, you're selling out your people. You're gonna have a hard time on this campus. And a lot of African American brothers and sisters, I specifically say African American brothers and sisters, because Jamaican and other Caribbean folks was like, girl, you Black, you good. Like, we all together in this. And Africans from the continent. There were some African American students that wrote an op-ed, some of my peers, and were like, you know, a Puerto Rican shouldn't be a president of the Black Student Union. And when I went to Dr. Gordon, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm gonna give up this position. She's like, no, this is the moment where you have to be very clear on who you are. And you're gonna have to be very clear that many people are not gonna like it. Now, currently, as Latinos, us saying we're African descendant or Afro-Latino, Latina, is very fucking trendy. But this was 1993. So for me to be first saying I'm African descendant, then to understand that Puerto Ricans and Dominican and Mexicanos are not a race, we're an ethnicity, then to push back against Hispanic at that time, where everything was Hispanic, descendant of Spain, was controversial, right? And this is in the academy, so this isn't like talking to people on the streets and outside of the academy who have a way better understanding of how we're interconnected than people who tend to intellectualize everything and put it in a box. But it was rough, you know, and then being a woman. I didn't realize until many years after I left my undergraduate career, even when I went to get my master's at Cornell University, how patriarchy works and how everyone who's born a man is a patriarch, potentially, and has to literally exorcise that demon from themselves. But what I did have at that time, and also at this time, I pushed away from my family. I was very mad at my father and my mother for not telling me things about Puerto Rico that I should know. I was mad that I didn't know we were a colony, that I didn't know there were political prisoners, that there was an independentista movement. I was very in conflict with many of my relatives and cousins, many who are half white, who don't even acknowledge their Puerto Ricanness outside of a flag or a parade. Then I'm coming into the table like, yo, I'm African descendant, I'm a black Puerto Rican. They're like, this, you know. So I actually pulled away from my family for many, many years as I was going through this identity crisis, basically. But I did good work with Asuba, and we were a powerful force to the point where on our campus we took over student government for 2 years, where there were no white people running student government. Every position in student government was a person of color. And we broke that budget and gave mass student groups of color money. And white folks didn't like it, but that's how we got down on that campus. And every time there was an issue, we were united as one. Also, this was the mid-90s where the ethos of Afrocentric education was being pushed. The idea that we center Africa and decentralize Europe. The idea that we talk about resistance and not always our oppression. Because many times as people of color, we're always taught what happens to us, and we're not taught how we fight back. And then when we fight back, how the state literally seeks to destroy us. And if anybody has a question of that, they could look at the current FBI report that has now just named Black identity as an extremist group. But in that report, they also have a 9th one that they've named, and that's Puerto Rican nationalists. At the time that Puerto Rico is in crisis, the FBI wants to say that Puerto Rican nationalism is an extremist identity that could lead to terrorism. That just happened last week with the FBI designation. So I had a very clear understanding too of our history as a people, as a trained historian, and as someone who deeply studies social justice movements from the 50s to current times. That was my undergraduate experience, and that is always the basis of how I am who I am. And then I would go on to Cornell and get my master's in Africana Studies there and do my thesis on the Young Lords Party. And when I began to study the Young Lords and began to have relationships with many of them, Edith Morales, Richie Perez, Panama Iba, Juan Gonzalez, Pablo Guzman, Felipe Luciano, like I interviewed all of them. At that time, there were only 2 theses on the Young Lords Party, another sister's and mine. And that was in 96 to 98, I was at Cornell. But even as a graduate student, I was super involved. Like I was one of those graduate students that didn't hang out with grad students because I was like, y'all are whack. You always want to be in the library and the undergrads are right there and I'm gonna build with the undergrads. Because I don't understand this disconnect between graduate and undergraduate students. And also I like to have fun. So I was like, dude, like it's like, we're here at Cornell, a hotbed of political activism. A lot has happened. Like you can't just be doing your graduate work for yourself. And it's our duty to like build with undergraduate students. Plus I come out of Africana Studies and that's our ethos, is scholar activism. And then I graduated from Cornell, I moved to New York. I became a teacher. I left that after 2 years when I knew the New York City public school system was literally seeking to destroy our lives and criminalize young people. I worked all my life to be a teacher and I left after 2 years because I was like, I can't be part of this system. I got a lot of friends who are teachers and now all the way to principals. I admire them, that they've been in the game that long. I was like, I can't do this. I can't be in a school where you're spending money to build a prison cell to detain kids and not give me books to teach history. I can't be in a school where I got 180 kids a week in my class and you still haven't given me books in December because history is not important enough to teach anymore. The time I went and became a teacher was when we got the No Child Left Behind Act. That basically standardized testing became the norm. So I left teaching, but at the same time, while I was living in Brooklyn and then eventually East Harlem, I joined the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And the Malcolm X grassroots movement became my political home, and to this day is my political home. And through Malcolm X grassroots movement, I found my voice in writing, where I began to write articles around me identifying as black, also writing articles going against Russell Simmons and all the dudes in hip hop that were destroying the culture. Being very bold, and I think at that point I wouldn't have called it that, but unapologetic about what hip hop culture should be, what it is, and how it's been co-opted. And in 2001, I went to the UN Conference Against World Racism in South Africa as part of Black August, which is a project of, Black August is a tradition, but we in the Malcolm X grassroots movement use Black August as a celebration of what we call hip hop and freedom fighters, where every year we would highlight political prisoners in the United States. And I got the opportunity to produce the tour in South Africa and also be at the UN Conference Against World Racism. And I landed back in New York from that conference on September 11th. I was in the air. We were the last flight allowed to land at JFK when we saw the second tower hit. The plane hit the second tower. And within weeks of 9/11 here, all the groups that I had been aligned with or politically with had been infiltrated, offices had been ransacked, and people were under surveillance. And that was in 2001. I would eventually go on to be part of the founding members of the National Hip Hop Political Convention. Took place, the first one in 2004 in Newark, New Jersey, subsequently 2 more. And by the time the third one was over in 2008 was when I became the nominee with Cynthia McKinney on the Green Party ticket, where we, to this day, remain the only woman of color ticket in American presidential politics. Cynthia was the presidential candidate, and I was the VP candidate. So from 2008 till now, I've done a lot. I've managed groups like Dead Prez and the Welfare Poets, been in pretty much any hip hop work, activism, all of that. Been in every nonprofit and gotten fired from every nonprofit. So, had a clear understanding on the nonprofit industrial complex. And after I ran, I got hired from Amnesty, but within 3 months they fired me. And I was like, shit, I'm back in the Bronx in a 1-bedroom apartment. My husband is formerly incarcerated and can only get work as a dishwasher. We have our daughter, and I have nothing. We have nothing right now financially. I decided to apply and get my doctorate, applied to grad school for a PhD. I always wanted to get my doctorate. That's always been something I wanted to do. But at that moment, I was like, I'm fucked. Like, I got no money, I got a student loan debt. We struggling right now. Thank God we have this apartment in the Bronx that my uncle left us. You know, at that point, me, my parents, my family, we're tight, we good, but I'm always like calling my parents like, I need help. You know, my husband's trying to find another job, but people with felonies don't get jobs. Like, it was crazy. And I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna apply to school and I'll just go into more debt if I have to. And in 2011, I went up to UMass Amherst that summer to begin my PhD program at the W.E.B. Du Bois Department. And then basically locked down in Amherst for 3 years. Like, a lot of people would call me from the city, like, when are you coming? I'm like, I'm not. Like, right now my focus is getting this PhD. And in 2014, Ferguson happened. And the Mike Brown Rebellion happened. And we were watching it on TV. Well, before 2014, let me say, 2013, Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman's killer, walked away. And I began to see a younger generation of young people of color, not only from Trayvon Martin, but what was also going on with undocumented brothers and sisters being like, but Obama was supposed to help us, and Obama was this, and George Zimmerman, and they killed Troy Davis. And I was like, right, this is a young generation that rode hard for Obama, and Obama fucked all of us when it comes to social justice. It's under Obama that we have the most people ever undocumented, or people most deported. Under a black Democratic president is where we have Black Lives Matter have to make a stand. Under a black Democratic president, we have the start of drone warfare as the norm. AFRICOM. But what I realized is those young people were riding hard thinking that a black president could make change, and that what they didn't understand is that systemically, the system of white supremacy does not actually need white people to carry it out. That you can have a black man be an imperialist, and you can have a woman be a patriarch, like Hillary Clinton and all her policies. And I was like, and young people are not reading, like, what is happening? They're just making an assumption that because you look like we do, that we're gonna do the right thing for our people. But that's not how power plays. And in a society that is increasingly becoming people of color, it's like South Africa, right? Majority black, minority rule. That's what's happening in America. Except in America, we also have the 1% of the 1%. It's under Obama that we have Occupy Wall Street. The movement of Occupy failed because they didn't want to center racial justice. White kids all of a sudden were like, we're in debt. And we're like, go across the bridge and see how many people in Brooklyn are in debt because they're gentrified. But the movement of Occupy did fail because white young kids thought that student loan debt or debt was the big thing and never centered racial justice. And that's what happens in all these movements. People don't want to center racial justice. They want to talk about everything else. If the working class is good, racism ends. No, there's working people that are white that are racist because they've constructed a white identity that makes them think they're better than everybody else, or it's been constructed for them. The idea that African American Latinos are not the largest working class. We are the working class. Our numbers of poverty speak for themselves. Latest numbers come out. 80% of black and Latinos lost all their wealth during the recession. Women of color make $5 to every white woman making $3,000 with a college degree. Like that's real. So what happened is a new generation was sold a bill of goods. Like the black man's president is all good. Well, it's not. And it's all the Obama that DACA recipients thought they were gonna be all right. And when I used to do speeches during that time and say, this DACA thing is not good. You preferring an undocumented that will go to war or college over, quote, an undocumented that the system sees as criminal, they're gonna use that shit against us. I got a whole speech where I talk about exactly what is about happening now. What essentially DACA did, not DACA, the Dreamers, and they didn't mean to do this. I've met a lot of Dreamers that are leaders, and I would go to conferences like, listen, if you asking for protections against one group of people, this system will flip that shit on you when it's, right? Their idea was that someone like Trump would never get in office and flip it. So then that's why Dreamers are the only undocumented people that have a database that can find them at any moment because they registered with the government as Dreamers. And now look at what happened. Look at what's happening right now to Dreamers. They're gonna be the most massively deported because they could be found in a minute because of the president we have now. We have to be very analytical in the system because this system is 10 years ahead of us. Then we have to prepare ourselves politically to organize and educate people around this stuff. And let me tell you, as college students, we always think we're special, right? We always think we're on the come up. We're better than everybody. In fact, some of our own people, look, African American, Latino, black and brown, why we hate people in the hood is because we blame them for being poor. We blame them for having to have an underground economy because we think we've done something a little exceptional that takes us out of the realm of how white supremacy views us. So then we go to our cousins like, yo, why can't you do some shit? Why are you acting like this? Why does the community look like that? Because the system does that. And then it gleams some of us to then turn on our own people. And some of us are ashamed of our own people in poverty, in the hood, incarcerated. I've had that experience where I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Get your shit together. Stop doing this shit on the block. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've had that. And if we're not honest with ourselves, then what's the point? What are we here for college? To get a job? What job? What jobs are out there right now that are going to sustain us? There's no more working 40 years at one place and having a pension. You have to be multilingual, multi-identity, sustainability. To me, the larger issue that I always would rather talk about is capitalism. How this system is destroying all of us, regardless of race, ethnicity, and sexuality. I would love to get to that point where all of us are talking about the system of capitalism. But I cannot get to that point where every 28 hours or less an African American or Latino or Native person is being shot. I can't get to that point where black queer trans women are the most shot by the police, have the lowest life expectancy rate, 35 years old. I can't do that. So we got to even get beyond this idea of white people being allies. Fucking ally, dude. Either you're accomplished for racial justice or get the fuck out the way. I don't need an ally. I don't need an ally. Women don't need men to be allies. We need you to break patriarchy and misogyny and sexism, not to say, I get how you feel, and then perpetuate patriarchy, sexism, and misogyny. Our queer brothers and sisters need accomplices, not, I get you, you LGBTQ, like their whole identity is based on a letter or sexuality. Ferguson taught me that. When Ferguson happened, Talib Kweli, a hip hop artist, said, Rosa, we need to go. I said, dude, I'm moving for a year for a visiting fellowship to finish his dissertation in LA. He's like, you gotta come. And I said, you're right. We touched down on Ferguson, and what we realized is that Ferguson broke the norm of what we think organizing looked like. First, they didn't want any preachers or any Al Sharptons or Jesse Jackson or Congress people there. Second, this was a movement of sets, i.e. gangs, if people want to use that. And it was also led by many black queer women. At the same time, Black Lives Matter was a hashtag that got lifted up during Ferguson. But we went to Ferguson, a town that's less than 5 miles. And when we got in the streets that night, the militarization is something I had never seen in my life, but I knew was coming since September 11th, when everything here began to get militarized and police forces began to get armored vehicles and all that shit. And they played that out in Ferguson, including drones, including machinery that drains your cell phone, because they were very concerned with how social media was being used to uplift Ferguson. And when we got there, one of the brothers from Dream Defenders, his name is Umi, he was like, look at this picture. And it was a picture from people in Palestine saying, we stand with the people of Ferguson. And I was like, yo, this is some very different than I've seen. But also by that night, me, Talib Kweli, Jessica Cam Moore, who he brought, and 13 other people had M16s to our heads for protesting. And if it wasn't for that CNN reporter, I don't know if we would have made it out of there alive, because they were ready to kill us in Ferguson for protesting the death of Michael Brown, who was 1 day away from going to college, from protesting a place that gave the Dred Scott decision. That Dred Scott decision, which made black people 3/5 of a person, happened in St. Louis. When we were talking to those young people, what do you think of movement? They're like, what the fuck's a movement? We in these streets. This is not about money or visibility or awards. This is our lives, right? That's my trajectory. I have 1 minute left, but I'm gonna go 5 on Puerto Rico. And then since Ferguson, I've been back here in New York, in upstate New York, in Albany. And even when I got to Albany, I helped create and found the Black BLM Upstate chapter. I've been part of BLM from the beginning, chapter-wise. BLM has chapters, and people don't realize that. I joined the LA chapter, and eventually we would be taken to trial. I can break down that trial. A trial that was supposed to last 2 days lasted a month. And when people ask me why did it last a month, I said because the system wanted to prove that they could imprison 7 Black Lives Matter activists that took over a highway, because they want to break us. But I've been in Albany, and I've been on tour for a couple years doing speaking engagements. I'm not as heavily involved in the day-to-day like meetings and organizing, but trying to also uplift like young people. I really believe that we need a youth to movement pipeline. We have a lot of pipelines that are destructive, and my thing is that people my generation and older generations have actually let down younger people, and we need to create that pipeline of movement. So I've been in Albany, still involved, doing as much of my interviews and all that kind of stuff on issues, many issues, Charlottesville, all of it. And it's interesting because this past, when was it? Maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I came here to the Bronx to do a CNN interview with Kamau Bell. So that's a show on CNN called United Shades of America. And Kamau and his team did a standalone episode on Puerto Rico. And I said to Kamau, I said, yo, I don't remember any network TV in I don't know how long ever doing something on Puerto Rico, so thank you. And you know, people have, my friends had critiques. They're like, Rosa, I'm like, dude, I got 5 minutes. Like, it's CNN. Like, just build from this shit with your people. Like, just build with it. It's not gonna solve the Puerto Rican problem. But I have to say, when I did that interview, I didn't think that 6 months later I would be in Puerto Rico with 6 amazing people: Eli, Mateo, Sense, Kat, Raquel, and Stephanie, seeing what we just saw. In fact, when I was here, my homie Vin just walked in from the back. Maybe a month ago, I was here to do a speech at Berkeley College on 42nd, and Vin showed up, and we were just kicking it. We were talking about the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and 4 days later, the hurricane hits. And I was at UNC Chapel Hill doing a speaking engagement and then watching it all night. And I said, fuck, this is gonna be bad, because the infrastructure in Puerto Rico, the government, like so many political issues dealing from when Hurricane America hit us 119 years ago and took us as a prize of war and colonized us. So I was sitting at home, and I had come down to New York to an organizing meeting, and some of the brothers and sisters were like, well, nobody should go down there right now, because really it's like saving lives right now. It's serious. And I said, okay, I'm gonna wait a week. Like, I'm gonna respect the organizers and not take resources. And I was just sitting at home. And then I heard Trump say that shit about us being lazy. And I was like, really? We're the lazy ones? Africans in this country who you enslaved are the lazy ones? The undocumented person that you extract their labor are the lazy ones? The Puerto Ricans that built a nation, that all you've done with your pharmaceutical companies and every company and tax havens, we're the lazy ones? I was like, I gotta get out of Albany. I gotta go down there. And Eve Ensler from the Vagina Monologues called me and said, I can't believe this guy, this predator in chief, Rosa, like, can you go down there? And I said, yeah, I need money. I don't have money. You send me down there, I'm go. And she gave us our beginning money. And I said, I'm not going down there by myself like I did with Katrina with 2 other people. I want to take a team right now of whip-ass, like Latina, Latino, Latinx, all of us, but younger. First, it has to be younger than anybody. Everybody on the crew has to be younger than me. Second, they gotta have the skill set. Third, they're gonna have to roll with what a catastrophe looks like. I've seen Katrina, so I know what it's like to work in a catastrophe. But even I wasn't prepared to land in Puerto Rico. See, when you land off the plane in Puerto Rico, all you see is greenery. And it looks like there's bombs that have been dropped in Puerto Rico because it's so brown. The minute we landed, We trying to call, like, we ain't calling nobody. There's no communication. Why are we in line for 4 hours for one rental car? Because there's no communication. How are we going to get 35 boxes of donations? We can't call anybody to pick us up. Where's the Airbnb tonight? We don't know. There's no communication. Then we come in on the day that Pence visited. Mike Pence. We were stuck in the airport for almost 2 hours. Then when we finally get to the next spot, we stuck and we're like, wait, it's dark. Right, there's no lights. There's no signal lights. Shit is flooding. Like, this is the shit. That was our first day here. That was our first night. We finally found an Airbnb at 11 o'clock at night. Right? But then we're all walking on like, where's the lights? We're like, there's no fucking lights. Because you're so socialized to turn a switch on. We're like, lucky we had water. You know why? Because the people of Puerto Rico right now are dying because there is no water. When we say there's no water in Puerto Rico. People are drinking out of contaminated places with water to survive. Mothers are giving their children water that gives them diarrhea to stop the diarrhea that continues the diarrhea. All those donations and all those events everybody's been going to, we don't know where the fuck they are because the Puerto Rican people don't have them. But we flew a drone over the port where we see thousands of containers with all the donations that anybody here sent sitting on a port to this day. Because apparently the military can invade a nation and find someone in a cave in Afghanistan, but does not know how to break down a container and get people water. Babies are eating mashed bananas. Mothers are not lactating. People are not having necessary surgery because the hospitals don't have water. San Juan is pitch black at night. If San Juan, the main city that has functionality, is like that, what about the places we went to with a team of 7 people? We went to places that the military is like, it's too hard to get there. We went in a Kia and a Hyundai Accent to mountains. Kat and Raquel, who are here right now, drove through Aguadilla. If anybody knows, that's all the way on the west of Puerto Rico. That should take 2 hours, took them 5. 6 o'clock is nighttime. There's nothing, there's no lights. They drove there as part of our team. We drove to Utuado and got to a mountain where right down the street, the military is like, we can't get a truck up there. Really, motherfuckers? We just went up there in a Sonata. Like, stop it. And people are dying right now. A woman without her diabetes medication for 8 days. Then they're telling everybody, fill out a FEMA application. You know how you fill out FEMA? Online. There is no Wi-Fi in Puerto Rico. You have to sneak up into a hotel. In order to sneak up in the hotel, all they have is security. But if you go to Walmart, there's mad police there, standing on the line, keeping control. If you go to Sam's Club, that's where the police are, keeping control. But then you ask, why don't you have a water filtration tank up in here? Why are people standing in line from 3 a.m. to 1 p.m. for a bag of ice but have no water? Why is the morgue got military fencing? Why is the morgue, you're telling us 45 people have died, we go to a morgue and we see 6 huge trailer type of trucks that are refrigerated 24 hours because you got cadavers in there? Why are you cremating people and then telling them after the fact that their loved one is dead, they can come pick up their ashes? Why is FEMA, private contractors, and every stripe of military and special forces up in the Sheraton Hotel where I could tape them dancing to La Macarena while people are dancing, dying 2 blocks away? Why is everything in Puerto Rico 8 to 10 times a day you get an alert? Flash flood warning, 2 feet of water. You could die in that. Flash flood warning, dirt saturated, mountain communities are completely in the houses. You need to see some of Raquel and Kat's slideshow, which maybe we'll have time while we're talking to run it and turn down the music to see some of these pictures. People don't have roofs. It's raining every day in Puerto Rico, and FEMA has 1 million tarps, and they have not broken the container to give them away. The USS Comfort sits in San Juan right now that can take 3,000 of the most medically urgent cases, and there's 17 people at the USS Comfort. There are nurses who told us that they've been to war zones for 40 years and have never seen this in their lives. So anybody who tells you that Puerto Rico, you can start playing it, is all right, is lying. Whether it's mainstream media, your professors, your friends, it's a lie, y'all. We went with 7 people on a budget of less than 20 G's, and this is what we were able to capture. And every Boricua there shared their story because they said, you have to tell the truth. How do I walk into a convention center and we're the only U.S. press there and we're independent? This is what's happening. So tonight there are going to be people in Puerto Rico that die. Every night. Water is life for real. If nobody got it before, we're getting that in Puerto Rico. And FEMA is talking about, this is all contaminated water. There's leptospirosis, which is rat urine that infects. There's a breakout of a pink eye on the island. That's just how many people died in Aguadilla, 30. So that 48 number, that's lies. This is all lies y'all are getting right now. You also see that a lot of people are older. Why? Because in a month, over 20,000, mostly young people, have fled the island. Why would they stay? People haven't gotten paychecks since before Hurricane Maria. People have been out of light since Hurricane Irma. The normal day in Puerto Rico right now is you get up to stand in a line, to stand in a line, to stand in a line. This is the FEMA box that Juanita got. 1 box, 21 days. This is bullshit. 1 box in 21 days in 1 house for her and her son. This is the card that's sent to people in the box. That's the FEMA depot that we found on our own with over 40,000 boxes of food that had not been distributed. This is the spring water that's contaminated, even if it's coming from the mountain. That's Utuado, the bridge that collapsed. That's Letty and Mildred. Mildred hasn't had her diabetic patient in 10 days. That's her car in the mountain of Utuado. That's the FEMA food. That's what you get for dinner. Narijanto is also where Raquel and Kat got to, because this is what people do. They got machetes and clearing everything on their own. Mind you, there's 7,000 trucks right now, big-ass trucks sitting at the National Guard offices, and they're not moving to clear anything. You could go to Appear on the Map, and not only, you could see everything. You could see my Facebook Lives, the one from the Sheraton, you know, and you start to peel everything, and it's layers and layers and layers of, I know I've been cursing a lot today, I don't care, but it's, as y'all say, it's layers of fuckery on top of fuckery, and they want us to think that Puerto Rico is good. In order for people to rebuild their houses, they have to fill out a FEMA application, or FEMA will just give you $500 and you sign away your rights. This is where my dad's from, Rio Piedras, which was not hard hit. That I'm letting y'all know. The other regions were hard hit. That's Stephanie, one of our folks. This is a youth brigade. Military chilling at the Sheraton, because that's what they do. They get meals and water 3 times a day. That's one of the comaridas, yeah, which is community feeding and political ed. These are some of the young women. So kids aren't in school and might not be in school for the year. So what are they doing? They're helping their community. That's the thing about Puerto Rico. Everybody's helping each other. That's not even the issue. But they're also not talking about the Jones Act or the debt or anything. They're like, fuck all that politics shit. Like, we helping ourselves and trying to rebuild a nation. But you can't rebuild a nation when people are dying and people are fleeing and people are being forced, to leave. We got there, and this store made in Puerto Rico is very well known because it's Puerto Rican owned. And while we were there, some white person had already bought it up and was covering it up to make it into some hipster bar. I think he was like, I'm from Kansas. I just came here with money and bought the guy out. Right. Because you bought the guy out who needs money to feed his family or buy a generator. So, yeah, we're committed to. So it started off as me being like, I'm going to go and do what I do. And then being like, no, we have to tell the stories of our people. No Boricuas no people are going to tell the story, first and foremost, like Boricuas and other than Latino, Latina, Latinx folks, our brothers and sisters. And the best thing you could do for Puerto Rico right now is amplify. I ask anybody, if you want to donate to us, please do so, but do not donate if you rather give your money to a community organization on the ground, which we would tell you. But for those that have the extra means, our reporting has gone viral because 7 people are committed to telling the truth, and we're not looking for the come up or the academic or the career. People are dying every day, and we know it. And some of us have family there. I saw my aunt in a hospital and had to be taken to her in a hazmat suit. And the nurse straight up was like, she's not getting surgery because she's not dying right now, because we don't have enough water for all the surgeries. She had an infection going on from her broken ankle. Luckily, she finally got surgery. But the idea that your hospitals have to basically do what they call triage, save who they can, and everybody else dies. So that 46 number, we already know it's in the hundreds, just from who we've talked to. It's going to go into the thousands. And it won't be the immediate impact of the hurricanes. It'll be the human rights violations and the neglect. People are not looking for the U.S. government. They are not talking about Trump. That's something that we could do here and keep getting in that. But also be very clear that the Democratic Party and our own Congress people who are Puerto Rican, like Nita Velázquez and Jose Serrano, and celebrities like Lin-Manuel Miranda, that all of a sudden the dude from Hamilton writing about dead white men becomes the spokesperson for Puerto Rico. I don't know how that happened, but they all rolled with Promesa. And the Promesa, what it actually did, that bill, was take financial control that was left of the island and give it to Wall Street bondholders. So when you're having your conversations and people bring up Hispanic Federation and Nita Velázquez and Serrano, they all rode with Promesa that continued to weaken the infrastructure in Puerto Rico. And the governor has recently decided that he's going to give a multi-billion-dollar project to rebuild the electrical grid, which it shouldn't be built on electricity, it should be solar. We all know that at this point. It shouldn't be rebuilt the same way. But he gave the contract to a private equity firm in Montana that has 2 people in it, 3 employees worth $1 million. And you give $1 billion contract to them, that's your homies. That's your kickback. While your people are dying, he's in Miami watching a telethon with Jennifer Lopez and Mark Anthony raising money for his wife's foundation to push statehood. So anybody watching television at night thought you were doing good? Who's the organization that got the money? It's easy, right, to be like, oh, I'm just going to give to Puerto Rico. I'm just going to give my money here and it's going to get to the right person. It's not getting to the people. The supplies aren't getting to the people. And lastly, I'll end with this note on Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a cash society right now. You don't have power, ATMs don't work. Debit cards don't work. You have food stamps, you're not swiping your EBT card. It's a cash society. So for anybody who has the means, you need to get up with a group that will actually take cash and take it to that island, or you need to go to the island and get up with the groups that will be on our page. But there's a plethora of groups in New York that are trustworthy that will say, Aye Aite, Casa Pueblo, Daye Salud. The Hurricane Maria Fund here is dope. But they're flush with money right now, and they're going to do the right thing. In Louisa alone, y'all could take that on as a project. Their Boys and Girls Club is completely destroyed. And Louisa is the major African descendant town, and there's Dominican and Haitians, right? So everybody there is African descendant. Sasha, I could put you in touch with her now. But you have to be very purposeful now when you do something for Puerto Rico. It's not about charity. Like, our people don't need charity. They're holding it down as much as they can. Our people need people to uplift the story, go down there in brigades, and bring machinery. And Letty said, fuck FEMA, bring the machinery in Spanish. We don't need no clothes. We don't need sneakers. We don't need people to keep sending water and that. We need machinery. We need saw chains. We need people that are willing to give SUVs so we could get up to the mountains. That's what the people are asking for. I'm not saying anybody in here has that type of I wish I could buy somebody a SUV, right? A town. I don't have that type of resource, but I know that my resource is talking to my family, my friends, political education, being in partnership with my comrades, and to break the narrative that Puerto Rico is doing good. Puerto Rico is not doing good. And as Boricuas, particularly if you're Boricua and you're silent, and your Puerto Ricanness is a parade or a tattoo, you're complicit in the death of your people and the destruction of your nation. It's hard, but nothing I say should piss off anybody. What should be pissing people off is that right now there's a baby that doesn't have water, and that babies are going to sleep with the sounds of generators and waking up to the sounds of military occupation. That's what should be making you angry. So I hope that you all just keep checking out our stuff and find a way to plug into the work, because everybody and anybody is needed at this present moment. Thank you. Yeah. So all the unions, look, I even ran into cats from the New York City Department of Sanitation. It's not that people aren't there. And let me say, New York State and New York City both, I got my issues with Cuomo and de Blasio, but I think because of our speaker in New York City, Melissa Mark Viverito, has done an amazing job of saying, look, any worker that wants to go down civil service should go down. They're there, but when they get to the command center, there's no way for them. They got to figure out where to go. So people show up and are asking us, like, I'm a delegation of 20 doctors and the governor's people didn't meet us. And you're like, why not? Like, so you then get sent to the Puerto Rican Convention Center, which is the command center. And there you basically talk to people and they're like, yo, we've been here and no one knows what the hell, where we go, how to do it, how to do this. So they kind of start figuring that on their own. But all the unions have been sending people down there. So there are postal workers? Oh yeah, there's postal workers that are there waiting to get an assignment to help. But essentially what has happened is the Puerto Rican government has collapsed. So Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz, which if you see on our website, we have a preview of the interview. We're one of the first U.S. press we might be the only one, U.S.-based journalist to sit down with her. The longer interview will drop on Friday. She said the AFCIO, all the unions, nurses have been there. But she's in de facto become the leader of Puerto Rico, and she's a mayor. And the reason is because she's in San Juan and can communicate with the other mayors sometimes in municipalities. And like I said, the governor, Jose Joe, is fucking in Miami at concerts, raising money for his fund, or in his mansion talking about, it's too hard to get to the press conference today. Like, he doesn't even show up to the press briefings when we've been there. We've even we have an interview with a military person. His name is General Sharpie, Commander General Sharpie. He commands the entire Air Force. And I asked him, when Trump said he was going to pull out the military and FEMA, and he said, our job is to save lives. But if we don't have the structure or the bureaucracy and gets in the way, then we're all just going to be up here not knowing what to do. He was straight up honest like that. The FEMA representatives, they're the worst out of all of it. They're like, our job is to collect insurance claims. We're not here to distribute food and water. And when you look at FEMA, actually they are not there to distribute food and water. FEMA is Federal Emergency Management Assistant, and what they really do is to take insurance claims. So that's why they're all sitting there, because there's no insurance claims coming when you can't get on Wi-Fi or call to file your insurance claim. So the levels of government incompetency, negligence, like I know some of my homies are like, it's a conspiracy. I said, dude, it's not even that nefarious. They hate us. They don't give a fuck about us, and they're gonna let us die. It ain't conspiracy. They've been very clear. Huh?
It's the same benign neglect and planned treatment.
Well, that's what it is, benign neglect, and then eventual gentrification. I keep saying they want a Puerto Rico without Puerto Ricans. They make it easy to leave, hard to stay. Then they want to say, like I had said at the beginning, I don't know if you, we can invade a nation and find some quote, international rogue in a cave, or you can get a satellite dish from the space and find somebody's license, but you can't figure out how to distribute water in the streets. Meanwhile, we're 7 people and we're distributing 40 boxes of supplies with all the people on the ground that are doing the work. It's a lot, it's heavy. And I encourage everybody, especially like, I'm definitely a mental health advocate. I've talked about my own depression, and I was even telling the crew like every day, like, listen, this is gonna hit you. I know after Katrina, I've only been to New Orleans twice since then, and the 3rd time I went, I was supposed to speak, and I had an anxiety attack in the airport because of what I seen after Hurricane Katrina, and I canceled the gig, and I have never been back to New Orleans or the state of Louisiana, and that happened in 2005. And this is 1,000 Katrinas. So for those that are doing the work, the mental health piece is really, really critical. And we weren't even able to glean that out, like the trauma that young people are feeling, the post-hurricane trauma, the neglect, like seeing their families suffering with medical needs, like it's a lot. I personally haven't been able to process because I just got here and I don't know when I will. I do know when I was leaving yesterday, I took a Facebook Live and I said, I'm on an island. This is our ocean, and it's so contaminated, I can't go in the ocean like I do every time before I go on a flight. And when the flight took off, you know how when you take off from a city like LA, New York, a big city, right, or a big place, you see all the lights? There are no lights. So as we were taking off, I was like, that's the satellite image of Puerto Rico dark, but seeing it with your own eyes at night, and you're like, the only lights are right there. It was, and then when my sister picked me up, I was like, there's fucking lights and Wi-Fi, and like, this is so, I feel guilty and fucked up, and I'm like, plugging in my phone, and I'm like, no, don't plug in your phone, go without it like you've been, or it's surreal, it's so surreal. So if you go down there, just be very aware and surround yourself with people that will uplift you when it hits, because it will hit you. You will feel guilty seeing people, and no matter what you give is not enough when you're dealing with 3.5 million people that have been left behind. It's a lot, but as an organizer, I know I'm lucky enough to, like, I just called my girl now and I was like, girl, even if it's an hour, I gotta see you. I gotta hug on you tonight. I got to. Like, she's like, we're gonna be there in an hour. I was like, I gotta take the shot of tequila tonight. Like, tonight's the night. I'll wake up tomorrow and do the work, but it's hard, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just to reiterate, I mean, you have been on an island with no power, no running, running water in some places. 10 days, you came back 2 a.m. You've been nonstop.
Yeah, all the team though, the entire team. I want to keep,
7.
I want to keep doing that
7,
because,
right?
I think, especially with, even in the movement, people like me who have visibility will be uplifted. And I'm very cautious of that. I'm always like, who wants to give me an award? Then I'm not doing some shit right. Like, nah, I'm not taking your Vogue award or being on your cover. Because, nah. But I'm also very purposeful in uplifting that because I think that's how leadership also develops, you know? And I don't want to become the de facto Rosa Clemente. No, I did not do this on my own. There's a team that includes my sister, Yanita, who held it down stateside communication-wise when people like, why is your Facebook Live dropping? And she's like, because there's no Wi-Fi. Like, what the fuck? Things like that. But, and also because no one in the movement, I feel, should ever be exceptional to the cause of liberation.
And so I think that the gender come first before race. Or
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I don't split my identities. And I don't rank myself as a woman or then a black Puerto Rican. Okay? I think in these terms, we have to look at statistics and what they tell us, right? So let's say affirmative action. Who did that benefit the most?
White women.
White women.
What?
Affirmative action.
Okay.
The process, like the affirmative action laws that said we're gonna now open and give extra, like basically points to someone who's what they deem a person of color, right? To increase, particularly in corporations and colleges, the increase of black or, let's say this term, right? Just for statistics, black or Hispanic people. White women benefited the most from affirmative action. I think it's always important to realize that when I'm talking to my students about this, right, like I say, the KKK wasn't only white men. Like white women rode with the KKK, right, to kill black people, okay? So I think when we talk about America, the construct of race is real tricky because whiteness as well is a created construct. But the lived reality is that, for lack of a better term, because even people, as they should be, are pushing back on people of color as a term, there is no indicator that says the material conditions of a black man is better than a white woman. You see what I'm saying? Now, within our communities, is manhood privileged? 100%. So when we talk about police brutality, when a black man is killed, everybody's on that. When a black woman is killed, that's a whole different story, right? When an African is killed, that's a different story than maybe someone who is an African American. But even when we look at the system of mass incarceration, that was a system to destroy African American and Latino men that now is destroying more and more black African American women and Latina women as we become the increase in the system. So that's why all of this is tricky. So I don't think anything you're asking is I don't feel what you're saying in any way is wrong. You're trying to suss out, like, where do we, particularly as African American, Latina women, and African women, Caribbean women, where do we fare? Well, we're always on the bottom for sure, especially with economic status. But in education attainment, we're not. Right? So I think while you're doing this work, what you probably want to do more reading on is the idea of intersectionality and what Kimberly Crenshaw coined to deal with legal law that was not taking into account race and how race plays out. And intersectionality, well, Kimberly will say she never created it so that we have all these plethora of identities that deconstruct us into nothing that then doesn't make sense when the system is attacking us because of those identities. So that's what you want to, so you should never feel, especially as, where are you from?
Originally,
Yeah.
I'm from Haiti.
Do you identify as black?
Yes.
Okay. You should never feel that your blackness is less than yourself as a woman, or that who you are as a woman, if you identify as takes away from your blackness. They should never be in conflict. But you are right to question, especially as it regards to women of color in this country and patriarchy.
So just
Yeah.
gender come first?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We shouldn't be ranking them.
Oh, so they always.
Now, for you, you might come to the conclusion that I want to work on issues specifically with Haitian women, right? I'm maybe not interested in dealing with issues with Haitian men. That's a personal choice. But what I will tell you is, if you're walking down the street with a Haitian brother and the police stop you, I don't think any one of you are going to be treated as differently by how the police treat both of you, because they see blackness first, right? So I think that's an excellent thing, because what you also need to do is, I would encourage you not to only read intersectionality. I think you have to read a lot of like Frantz Fanon, the writer. Fanon, yeah, say it's Fanon. And what he talks about, the colonized mindset, and how oftentimes the oppression becomes so intense that we begin to see our own people as oppressors when it's the system that's oppressive. So I thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an excellent point. And you
Yeah.
have to, that information so well, because, we're going to talk about systems of power. Black men rarely get treated better than a white woman. And in fact, white women got the right to vote before black men.
Oh yeah, let's remind everybody that white women are the reason Trump's in office.
85%.
52.
No,
50.
A little over 52.
52% of white women voted for Donald Trump. Okay? That means 1 out of every 2 women. And they could be your progressive white friend, your lefty white friend, the one that gets you. They voted for whiteness before they voted for them. They voted for white supremacy before they voted for themselves.
Those are ignorant. Were they like poorly educated or anything?
No, that's my whole point. There's an idea that the white women who voted for Trump there's an idea that white people who voted for Trump are these white people. The ones in West Virginia drinking Mountain Dews with no teeth. Straight up. I'm saying that as the stereotype that's out there. It doesn't talk about the white woman who's running a college who voted for Trump. That 85% you might be talking about is that 90% of African American women voted for Hillary Clinton. Right? So again, black women were the potential saviors from Trump. But the fact that half the women who voted, white women, voted for patriarchy and white supremacy before themselves, it kind of shows that. Yeah. The men? Well, I think men in general in this society have to be super aware that they have to undo what they've been taught about women and patriarchy, right? How do you do that? In a family, you challenge men, right? Like, how do you do that in academic spaces? You challenge men. How do you tell a man, like, you don't have to explain something. You don't have to speak after I speak and translate what I just said. What I said is what I meant. I think in our families, it could be difficult because many people will say, well, that's just the way it is. But the way it is destructive. And we have to break that. So I think the family conversation is important. I also think after a while, when you're doing this work and you're, especially as a woman or someone who identifies as a woman, because this doesn't include our queer or trans brothers and sisters who don't take on any of these gender identities. But as a woman, you have to get to the point where you just gotta, like, it's not my job to unmake a 45-year-old man in his patriarchy. Like, I might talk to you real quick, but I'm not gonna spend 5 hours explaining to you why you're thinking or the words you're using or your misogyny. Like, I have to unteach it for you. That's your responsibility. That's your responsibility. Women spend too much time trying to fix things, especially women of color. Not only are we always trying to fix things, people expect us to mother everything. We got to make it, like even professors, right? Women of color, they've done studies where women of color spend over 8 hours a week extra, quote, mothering, helping a student. Now we do it because that's our students. But then it's like men are never expected as professors to be like, all right, let's call your mom and have the conversation, or how are you going to get food for the night, or you should go to the doctor. But we do that. But then it becomes an expectation in the classroom that we also have to mother, and we can't be as demanding as a man is in what we seek for our students. So I encourage people to always talk to their families. I always encourage, especially Latina women, to know that you might not change a man in your life. You know, so in studying the 1900s to the 1940s, black women's clubs and black women associations were the most, there were many of them. You know, so I think there was a reasoning that black women of that era in such a hard time were like, we also have to do this work together. I do believe, though, that patriarchy has been refined where there are women who carry out patriarchy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mentioned earlier, like Hillary Clinton. Like, you're the epitome of a war hawk, imperialist patriarch. You know, that's essentially, maybe she talked about sexism or had turned around on Trump one time, like, get the fuck off me. She might have won. But even that, she was such a bad candidate, period. And they thought that they could, the Democrats wanted Trump to be the nominee because they thought they would beat Trump. Because they don't see anything besides the East and the West Coast. They don't see the rest of the country. And I've traveled all over the country and saw enough people to know that Trump was gonna win. Just go to Albany and Buffalo and Rochester in the state. I was telling people in New York, you New York City folks are funny. There's more people outside of New York City and they're all Trump voters. The only part that went blue in New York for Hillary was New York City. You look at all the counties where I live in, that shit was all Confederate flags and Trump. And already Trump 20, whatever, what is it, 20? Oh my God.
And Staten Island went very
And but I do believe in specific spaces for those that are women and identify as women. I also know that young people are really breaking gender norms. And what we thought spaces for women or men is changing. When we have a lot of young people that are non-gender conforming, that don't want the title of woman or man, that are saying not only are we queer or trans, that even if we're not queer or trans, and what that means, that we're not taking on a gender identity. So I think we're at a point with our young people that gender is super fluid right now. And for someone like me, that's something I have to check myself on in spaces. You know, like I had to just recently be very mindful and be like they and them, right? Like, and be super respectful. And now I know in my class I have to say, this is a space. And if something is happening in this classroom that is taking away from your non-gender way of thinking, that I have to be super mindful and challenge myself. So I think because gender is so fluid now, that those spaces might not be what they were in the past. And I feel like people will more align themselves now with a politic or what they want as a politic, not necessarily because of notions of race, ethnicity, of gender, if that makes sense.
I find that 19th century I really did spend time to do Ida's story.
Yeah.
And say young people on the campus here, I find people want equality, they want justice, they want to stop killing their children, but they want a man, any kind of man.
I don't think that's true. That's what I'm saying. No. I mean, what about women who are lesbian? What about women who are trans?
Okay, did you know Audre Lorde or any of her work?
Yeah.
Audre talked about lesbian women behaving like patriarchal men in a way.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that's also Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, all of them. As critically important as they were, that was also the 60s and the 70s.
So you think it's changing?
I know it's changing. I see it with young people all the time. That's what I was saying. I'm 46 and I've been challenged in the last 2 or 3 years. What Audre Lorde and Hooks and even Barbara Smith had given as the foundation of black feminism is not the issue, is that there's a whole new younger generation of people that are saying we appreciate what was given to us, but we're even breaking that narrative. That's what I'm saying. They're pushing the boundaries in ways that we've never seen before. So I think in the movements, especially people over 40 have become very uncomfortable. They're like, why has it come down to sexuality? I'm like, people talking about their gender is not sexuality. That's 2 different things, right? This is because I was challenged in Ferguson in 2014, challenged in BLM circles, and I've taken on the challenge because I think it moves society forward. So I don't think they dismiss the words of any of these folks, but I also think that folks are also saying, well, now we can talk about Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, who were pioneers of black and Latina feminism that were cast aside by black and Latina feminists because they were queer.
I know that you have your opinions about the Green Party
Mm-hmm.
and the experience that even you had with your running mate in 2008. And I wanted you to speak a little bit to that because if we're going to talk about the political situation today, Hillary Clinton was just as bad as a candidate as the other person who won in terms of neoliberal politics, and she was a war hawk. I mean, she was really a terrible candidate. Let's just face it. She really was. And she did not, and she lost, right, because she didn't motivate people to vote for her, right? People stayed home. And so, what do you say to the people who stayed home? First of all, I'd like for you to speak about your experience as a vice presidential candidate, but also as a political expert. I really do feel that you are a presidential election, I think, because of your experience, an expert. What do you say to the young people who were not motivated to vote, and to the people who stayed home, especially considering what's happening today politically?
Yeah, I don't ever shame non-voters. If you don't want to vote, I'm good with you. I don't shame non-voters. Half the country doesn't vote. So either half of us got it right, or half of us got it wrong, or they got it right and we got it wrong. What I do ask the non-voters is why not? But they're more clear on the why not than the people who vote why.
Right.
You see? The whole electoral political system is not meant for us anymore. It's an elitist political project to keep power in play. That's why Nancy Pelosi and Schumer would take a meeting with Donald Trump as Democrats, as opposed to saying we're never fucking going to your office ever again. That's why people like Van Jones will say on CNN, he's presidential now because he just bombed a country. Right? And then we look to these people to be our political leaders. When Nancy and Chuck Schumer sat with Trump, they said we made a deal on DACA. Well, the deal they made was to reinforce the border with security and build the rest of the wall. You see what I'm saying? So with Democrats like that, who needs enemies? My take is that both parties will work in concert with each other to switch on and off for power. Bill de Blasio ran as a progressive, and what the fuck has he done but gentrify and let the police still get away with murder? You see what I'm saying? I am a friend of Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, but she has refused to put the Right to Know Act bill on the table for passage, which allows someone who's been killed by the police the right to know who, their families to know who killed them right away. The electoral political system is 100% corrupt and unworkable, especially since Citizens United got passed by the Supreme Court, which gives unlimited dollars. Now, in 2008, when we ran, it wasn't like this. It was getting towards where we're at now, but now almost, in my opinion, and Du Bois talked about this in 1956 when he said, "Why I won't vote." It's not an exercise in futility. I feel like if you want to vote, you should vote. But I think people have to be very clear on what they're voting for is not democracy. It's almost a political act. It's theater. Now, people in here might work in elected, spaces or electoral politics, and I don't have a problem with that because at the end, I feel that everyone in power who's elected should be held accountable. You run for office, you have to be held accountable. But what I think has happened in movement and organizing is we've replaced movement and organizing with voting. So already people are talking about 2018. You're talking about 2018 when the material conditions of people on the ground are getting worse. There's an assumption that Trump won't win again. He's going to win again. Because more and more people have been turned off by the two-party system. And his base is ride or die. Like we say in hip-hop, Trump's base is ride or die. They Charlottesville, ride or die. They're Paul Ryan, ride or die. And the Democrats are so inept and so weak, right? The Democrats took away the nomination from Bernie Sanders, who would have been the president, and I'm not a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm in the Green Party. Bernie should have ran as the independent that he is, not as a Democrat. But then the next day, what does Bernie Sanders do after the election? He throws people of color and identity under the bus and says, well, now we have to cater to the white man. Really, do? The white working man? What about the fact that in Michigan, 87,000 people voted, but they didn't vote for the president, period. There are people who voted down the ballot but didn't vote for president because they're so sick of the two-party system, right? So my thing is I never shame voters. My thing is I feel if the Green Party were to go after the voters the people who don't vote, as opposed to chasing after Bernie Sanders, trying to change a Trump voter, trying to change a Democrat, we could have built a party. And the Green Party inherently has white racist dudes in it running it. So the same shit the Democrats, me and Cynthia had to deal with white men telling us that we were too revolutionary, trying to take us off the ballot. My experience in the last campaign with campaigning and supporting Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka, I wrote about that. I wrote about the 3 white men on her staff that put their hands on me, said crazy shit to me, and are racist. And Jill Stein chose to keep them on her staff. A white woman chose to keep 3 white men, racist, running her staff. And it breaks my heart to say that with the Green Party because I love what the party stands for, and the platform is lit. Like, we're the ones, we've been talking about healthcare for all for 30 years. But the people running it are not. And I don't see younger people even going towards electoral politics, and I don't see women of any stripe running when it's so sexist and patriarchal and actually dangerous. Like, no matter my feelings on Hillary Clinton, when I put aside and I center her as a woman, the shit she had to endure, the fact that she's on a debate stage and dude is over her, stalking her, and nobody in that audience was like, as a woman, I'm like, nah, man, that's the patriarchy, that's the fear. So why would women, especially women of color, want to run? How can you run? You can't run a New York City Council seat with less than $1 million now. You can't run for senator with less than $50 million. Some Senate campaigns are $100 million. So the money, all of it is bad. But what happens is that there are many progressive people that they're mad that Trump won because their idea of America doesn't exist. And the thing is, my idea of America is that it's never existed. So now y'all are surprised because essentially you want to edify the system, but you don't want to break from it to give people the power that they need or the power that people are seeking. So that's my take. Personally, for me, I vote, but I don't I doubt I'll ever run for office again. I don't have a desire. No. There's a lot of local good mayors like Ras Baraka in Newark. I think Mayor Cruz in San Juan is great. I think, of course, Anti Lumumba in Jackson, Mississippi. We got some city council people in all over the country that are great. I think local politics is where you got to put your feet in, and it's the local work that keeps local communities from going. But I think too, part of my academic intellectualism is saying, like, we're spending way too much time on this right now. We're spending way too much time, like, asking why this happens when we're clear on why we know it happens, and trying to build with people that have a better way of maybe dealing with this. And I say that with the caveat that I could be completely wrong. It's a personal opinion. It's not like backed by fact or any of that. But for me, myself, I don't think I would ever do that again.
Right.
Yeah.
So going to that, I wanted to hear a little bit more about the youth to movement pipeline that we talked about, because what I was trying to speak to is the disenchanted people who don't vote anymore, who see, right, the system, the two-party system sucks. As long as it stands, what's happening will continue to happen, and I do believe that this person will be elected again. I can't even say his name. So I want to hear more about, like, what young people who are disenchanted with the political system but still want to see change happen. This youth to movement pipeline, I think, was really interesting that you talked about.
Well, yeah, it's just something I started thinking about like a couple months ago. So it's more that my generation, this hip hop generation, those of us born between 1969 and 80, in the mid 80s, I think we made the mistake of depending too much on the nonprofit industrial complex to solve problems. And then we started putting a lot of energy into running for office, who's voting, who's all of that. I think these times require uplifting young people that might not want to be down with any of that. And also, like, right, like Africans who were enslaved didn't vote to get free. Africans who were enslaved didn't vote to get free. They became free from organizing. Like black people couldn't vote till the late 60s.
Right.
So Ida and Fannie and them, what, they were going to a voting booth for power? Nah, they were not. That didn't even exist. It's what's happening in Puerto Rico right now. Puerto Ricans have some of the highest voter turnout rates, period, when there's an election. But the whole government has collapsed. You think Puerto Ricans are talking about voting? They're like, deja esa cosa. We done with that shit, man. We building a nation. How you pick leadership and all that has to be figured out. But I always tell my students, like, Africans did not vote to get free. White women got the right, women didn't get the right to vote. White women got the right to vote. Black women didn't get the right to vote till the 60s. We're only 50 years away from that. We've put too much emphasis on electoral politics at this point. So that youth to movement pipeline is also political education. We have to be, my generation, your generation, whoever chooses to birth children or have children in non-traditional ways, have to, from the minute a child is born, you must racially socialize your child. When my daughter was born, it began with the birth certificate that they gave me and marked Hispanic. And I was like, you could take that right back. They sent a social worker in to ask me if I was okay. I had just given birth. Why wouldn't I sign the birth certificate that had Hispanic? I said, because she's not Hispanic. Give me a new one. And I put other, Black, Puerto Rican. We don't have a box for that. You fucking do now. Now you got a box for it. It's not on the census. I don't care. Like, even my husband was like, dude, you just gave birth? Like, really? Like 3 hours in? And I said, yeah. And I learned that lesson from my Jewish friends. When I went to their bar mitzvahs, and I would go to their house, and they were doing Sabbath, and they would have matzo ball soup, and I was part of that growing up. And I saw my Jewish friends have a clear understanding of who they were as Jewish people, not a connection to Israel, as Jewish people. And I was like, we don't do that? We want to say, I want to shield my child from this. Well, 7-year-olds get shot by the police and 12-year-olds get shot by the police. What are you shielding your child from? I know that my daughter at 12 years old knows that the police are not her friend. She knows when she sees police, she goes across the street and she puts that phone on and records. She knows in a given emergency crisis, she would have the wherewithal to say, all right, there's someone there. There's a crisis. How do I get on the bus? It's something, a blizzard is happening. But in terms of her having ever looked at police as her friend or an interaction, nah. And it's at 12. Because they kill our kids. They imprison our children. We're the only country that still has the death penalty for children. Solitary confinement. I grew up in the Bronx, been in Brooklyn. We're going 4 generations deep into mass incarceration. Everybody knows a problem, but it's still happening. Like, I was like, nah. So from the minute she was born, Alicia, you're a black Puerto Rican. Alicia, this is who you are. Alicia, you want to go to the BLM rally? You want to march with a bullhorn? Alicia, mommy's about to potentially get arrested. She's like, I got daddy. He's going to be nervous. I got you, mom. Like, that's how I've raised my daughter. Part of too is that I also allow for her to be 12 years old. Right now, she ain't feeling the movement, so her thing is I'm going to the park every day after school. All right, but I know when she's talking to her friends and they're about to make a maybe bad decision, like I know this is, Alicia comes home the other day, she goes, Mom, we were at the park. Mommy, we were at the park. And some of the kids wanted to smoke weed. Not us, but some of them. So I went up to the kids and I said, there's police officers there. If you smoke weed, you're going to jail. So the kids were like, thanks, Alicia. Right. Like, thank you. Or recently they asked her to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. And she's like, no. But then all the kids afterwards were like, oh, you didn't stand for the pledge. Are you that? And she goes, yeah. Do I fight for justice? Yes. I don't stand up for the flag, and I have a right to. It doesn't mean that she didn't come home feeling a little funny, like, Mom, all the kids were saying something, and then I check in and go, how do you feel? She goes, I feel a little weird, but no, I know it was the right thing. And then a couple of days later, she says 7 of the kids now are sitting. They're not standing. So, you know, I give the balance because I never wanted, I've had a lot of my friends in the movement who said their parents forced them, like, and never gave them a little bit of levity and fun. And I'm like, no, if she wants to roll, she rolls. If she doesn't, she doesn't. But ultimately, she knows who she is, at least at this moment, racially. She knows what it means to, she doesn't like to identify as a girl anymore. And she was like, Mommy, I think I'm non-gender conforming and I might like girl. Cool, girl, let's rock with that. And, you know, let's talk about it and you do you and kind of things like that. Knowing also as a mom that I have to ultimately protect her and not always have her, like, I'm like, you cannot watch CNN anymore, dude. Like, she's like, Trump. I'm like, stop. Like, stop. As a professor, my principle in the classroom is I'm trying to turn every student into an organizer, unapologetically. When students don't like it, I'm like, you can withdraw and take another class. Well, any of them I teach. I've taught many classes, but, well, I taught a class called Race, Activism, and Emotions in Cal State in the Pan-African Studies Department. But I tell the students from the first day I'll meet them, I'll tell them a little bit about myself, and I'll say, my job is to make you intellectually rigorous, a scholar activist, hopefully a kick-ass writer, because we always need people that are writing, but for you to leave this classroom becoming an organizer. If you choose not to do that, I'm fine, but that's my ultimate goal in the classroom. And as a scholar activist in the ethos of Black Studies, that scholarship is not for a journal, it's not for an academic conference. Those are all great, we all do those. We need to write books, of course, especially on our people and our narratives. But if you're a scholar and all it is your scholarship in a confined space, that's not what we call bottom up. That's not organic intellectualism. And we have most of our people will never be in an academic setting like this, but they are organically intellectual people. It's just that the academics usually could glean that and write the academic language that will uplift what the brothers and sisters are already telling us.
That we could sort of like point to and say, if you're interested, let's check these folks out.
Oh yeah, organization-wise, I mean, I think Mi Gente, I think Black Lives Matter, because it has a lot of chapters. I think the Black Alliance for Just Immigration that's based here in New York. I think Dream Defenders out of Florida are amazing, and their politic is spot on. Black Youth Project that does their politics through a queer feminist lens. So those are organizations that I'm currently looking to. I also feel that part of what's happening in Puerto Rico is that people don't have a phone to communicate, and the political ed is this now. No, and that's the thing that's coming back. And we were having dinner with Vicente Panama Vicente Alba, and he had said, maybe he looked at Raquel or Kat, and he said, this is how you organize. You talk to somebody, you look them in their eye, you feel their energy. And now in Puerto Rico, people can't communicate. What are they doing? Yo, who needs water down the street? Good, we got 5 people. Who needs this? That youth to movement pipeline, the way I'm doing it right now is by creating PR on the map, like I said, being purposeful. And some of my friends hit me up like, why didn't you take me? I'm like, because, dude, we've been doing this shit 20 years, and we ain't moving the needle. So I'm taking a whole new crew of people. That's it. And they all got to be younger than me. That's my commitment to that. But the youth to movement pipeline, it's just something I just recently just started writing on in the disc. Like, wait a minute, we got all these pipelines. What does it mean for us to be organizers and activists and always go to conferences with the same people around? We do that as organizers and activists. Part of it is like, part of going to conferences for real is like, fuck, I'm seeing you. You've been doing work in Chicago, I'm in Florida. We building community for the weekend. We checking in on each other. That to me is important. But I can't continue to go to convenings where still the people my age and like a token group of young people. Nah, man. I want to see the 12-year-olds. I want to see the whole intergenerational thing, because especially through the Malcolm X grassroots movement, we came up intergenerationally. To this moment, my mentor is Dr. Maita Morena Vega right here at the Caribbean Cultural Center, the only woman of color to have an institution in New York that is owned by the people in the whole city. Because I've learned from her. Iris Morales, Mickey Melendez, Panama Alba. I don't edify my elders on a pedestal. They always told me not to do that. But I respect their wisdom. And I think for younger folks, folks like us have to have some like gravitas to be like, homie, like you're getting there, but you don't know everything. Just like I didn't know everything. And sometimes I'm gonna have to tell you something and just be like, you gotta listen. That doesn't mean I'm taking away your power. I think that's how we have the conversations. And you're a teacher, so you know that you're also seeing like that people also come to these spaces with a plethora of social problems, right? So you as a teacher are dealing with a lot. So it's like even before you get to the political ed, you getting into the heart of them young folks. Once they trust you, they're gonna ride with you. You know that. So I hope that was helpful. And thank you for letting us know. I mean, that was the main reason we went down there with PR on the map, was just like, nobody's gonna tell the truth. We don't need $1 billion corporation to know people are dying because they don't have clean water. And really, people were telling us stories that they're not gonna tell some white reporter behind a camera at CNN. And we speak Spanish. Some of us Spanglish. And they were like, tú eres from the, yep, and I speak broken English, and we still gonna do this interview, and you say how you want, you understand me, and I understand you, because language should never be a barrier to our people. So we appreciate that, because I think we felt the love being away, but then to come here and finally see like everything downloading and the impact, and then my sister's like, your metrics are high. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but that's good, right? She's like, it's amazing, you know? And really like to see my mom and dad have been riding with me for a while. And they're both 75. But like to hear my mom every day be like, I'm praying for everybody. I'm praying for Raquel and Kat and Sense and Mateo, and I'm praying for you, and I'm doing the rosary and keep doing the work. And then like seeing my mom get angrier, like she was already angry, but be like, este maricón, fucking pendejo Trump, I never want to see him again. It's like, oh. But then my sister was just telling me that my dad said, I don't want to see anymore. I don't want to see any more pictures. Why? Because his island is destroyed. And I don't think people that are in the United States that are Boricuas, you have to be really prepared to see the island. And so here's my mom like, go and do, and then here's my dad like, it's good, but I don't want to look at any more pictures. I don't want to see any more video. I don't want to watch any more news. So it's super important that we hear those affirmations, those messages from people, because you always focus on the one or two people that are like hating and why are you posting that and don't you, and then you kind of forget that we have felt the affirmation of our work there, and that we're not going there one time. We're going to keep going there. And we want more people to go there, and we want to keep uplifting those stories. The amount of people that texted all of us, can you go here and find my father? Can you go here? I wish we could have done that. It breaks my heart that everybody that texted us, we could not go. Because we could not reach it, or we didn't have enough time, or we didn't have enough people. But we all have messages in our inbox like, go to Mayagüez, go to Luquillo, can you get this? My diabetes medicine. We also went with stuff to give people, money, food, suitcases of things, where people met up with us. And it's like, for all the power in this country has, it always comes down to people power. And that's, I think, the biggest lesson we've learned in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
And also, to what Renee said, we knew you were gonna tell us the truth. We knew we were gonna get unfiltered, the whole team, access to what was happening.
Yeah.
And that is what was so powerful. That what you were showing us was what really was going down. It wasn't that you were editing it.
Yeah.
You were showing us the raw truth, and that was really powerful.
We edited some stuff, but I have to say, like, there was one point where I was like, oh my God, I cannot go on camera looking like this. Like this is bad. Like, I was like, no lipstick. And then I was like, you know what? This is it. This is grimy. This is dirty. I look terrible. We all look tired. We didn't wash. We smelled. Like, it was like, this is it, you know? And the vanity part of me personally was like, oh man, some troll's gonna pick up on this. And like, but then it was like, no, this is it. It's the crying, the anger, the emotions, joyful, then feeling bad that for 10 minutes we could have a little bit of food and smile. We'd look at each other and be like, no, you know, like, no, you know, smiling. But, you know, yeah, that's what grassroots journalism is about. It's not, you know, we were talking about this as a team earlier. It's not extractive, exploited, the stories. We made purposeful decisions too, not to show images of children. Like, we're not gonna be going down there showing images of children suffering. Hopefully nobody wants to do that, but we're not doing that. We're not trying to show images. Like even yesterday flying in from Puerto Rico, and I had hit Raquel, Kat, and Stephanie, and I was like, oh my God, there's like a line of people in wheelchairs. Like usually say 1 and 2, but there's like 20. And I took video just for myself to show them and the picture, and they're like, no, we saw that too. And it's like, in a plane you usually see like 1 or 2 wheelchair assists. This plane at the end had 24. And those people had to get out to live. And it was like, oh my God, this is happening on every flight, everywhere we go. Like, you know, but then I shared it with them. I was like, I'm gonna do this, but this is not shareable. Like, I'm not gonna be like sharing a picture of elderly people or disabled people on a wheelchair, because we don't need to do that to tell the story. We don't need to be exploitative or extractive of people's pain to do that. So we've made that decision too as a team, which I think is exactly the right one.
What do you think of Rosenio? As far as the storm, I think I feel differently now about him than before the storm. Before the storm, I kind of felt like he was just the rich kid, you know.
Well, he still is. He hasn't done anything.
You don't know, like.
No. I mean, and maybe Raquel and Kat might have some insight on this too from talking to people. But so when it comes to Puerto Rico, like I talked to, you know, the artist Residente, okay, from Calle 13, or the Residente. Well, we built with his sister and her husband. And he said, even though we want independence, the Independence Party is missing in action right now for the people. So all the political parties are missing in action for the people. What an election is going to look like in the future, I don't know. Maybe young people, like young people here, are so fed up, even though there's more choices in Puerto Rico. Well, my take is that Mayor Cruz will become the governor of Puerto Rico, but she also believes in the Commonwealth. So what does that mean? Now she has said that, she said in the interview that drops Friday, she did say that she has to question the relationship with the United States, which I'm like, okay. But ultimately, unless Puerto Rico is given what they deserve, the decolonization process through the United Nations, with the ability to become an independent nation, not just to say you're independent, but to be able to trade with other nations, the next catastrophe will be bad. And the climate catastrophes are coming. There's no more hurricane 1s or 2s. If a hurricane is going through Ireland in October, the wildfires, like the climate catastrophe is beyond the tipping point. So we're talking about Hurricane Maria. What's going to happen next year in Puerto Rico? Like, Puerto Rico can't take a hurricane category 1 right now, another hit. We can't even deal with flash floods because the ground and essentially the environment is collapsing in Puerto Rico in ways that we've never seen before. So on the politics of that, I don't know how that's going to happen. And in talking to a lot of Puerto Ricans, they're like, we just got to survive and thrive and do for self. Like I said, my take is that Cruz will be the next governor of Puerto Rico. Rosselló won't last. I wonder if he even lasts this term. Like, I wonder if there won't be a referendum to just pull him out of office. And then Puerto Rico has to cut down on having 78 mayors and 78 municipalities and 78 separate city governments. So the problem with that is going to be this idea that we have to still pay the debt. And I think what we need to do in the United States is not only push for cancellation of the debt, that Puerto Rico owes nothing and that we're owed reparations from everything the United States has taken from us. And we need to build on the legacy of the reparations movement of African descendants in this country that might not, quote, have gotten reparations the way it should be, but there's now a common, mentality that reparations is owed. What does that mean in the larger scale of U.S. geopolitical stuff in the UN? I don't know. But I know those are some of the things that some people are willing to dig deep and deal with, and I think we need to. And I really appreciate your, just telling us your story. Because a lot of people there also told us, I'm bad off, but I'm not as bad off as someone else. Or that we're all in this together. We all. So even the people in San Juan who were like, yeah, I got light. I'm bad. And then we talk to somebody in a region without light, and they're like, they don't have light, but they're still doing bad. It's been very heartening to see this common identity of who we are as a nation, but also I think a big break in us believing that this government was ever going to do anything from the people of Puerto Rico. So, you know. Yeah, so follow our work. Like we said, it's PR on the Map. We all have our individual Twitters and Facebook and Instagram account. You know, if you, like we say, if you can't donate, even if it's $1, the amount of $5 donations we got, I told people, when people are giving $5, that means they're giving $5. Like they've actually made a choice to budget and be like, I can give that. We're beginning to get a lot of support, like Gina Rodriguez, the actress, Mexicana, Jane the Virgin, she's like, you know, what happened? I meant to say Puerto Rican. No, because she was dealing with a lot of stuff in the Mexican earthquake, so that was my bad. I apologize. She's been like supporting us. Kamal Bell, I think because he did the episode in Puerto Rico and is like, I'm not going to see Puerto Rico that way. I'm like, nah, homie, not the way you saw it. You know, so we've gotten that level of folks to support us, but really it's the grassroots and the people that have been powering us, and we're gonna do what we have to do to continue to tell the stories. So definitely keep following us. I appreciate everybody's time, and you know, right now, like I tell everybody, if you're not spending 2 to 3 hours a day doing something on Puerto Rico, you know, I hope that you spend at least 1 hour a day, let me just say that, on doing something about Puerto Rico. Like Bell Hooks says, make your home site a place of resistance. Whatever that looks like, it needs to go towards Puerto Rico and empowering the people of Puerto Rico, not charity or telling them what to do. They are clear on that. It's our job to empower and uplift those voices. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
It's been such a treat.
Ah, thanks.
And you're amazing.